All right. Hey, everybody. Brian Fouch here, and welcome. Before we get rolling, I want to make sure that you guys can hear me. So if you guys can use that chat box, use the Q&A box, let me know that you can actually hear me and see my video and also see the screen. I'd appreciate that. Give me a yes or a Y or a yep or something in the chat box. We'll appreciate that. Make sure the tech is working. Make sure I'm not talking to myself. And okay, cool. Thanks. Appreciate that. All right, we'll give it about 1 or 2 minutes, get everybody in the room, see who shows up. But so, Mr. Johnson, where are you from, man? Or anybody else on the call? Where are you guys from? So I'm currently in Washington State. That's where I'm actually right now. So Dave, you're from New York, huh? Okay. You're on the opposite side from me then. If I'm in Washington, you're in New York, you're pretty far away. Yeah, very cool. All right. Give it another probably 30 seconds and then we'll go and get rolling. Oh, Ed, you're in Olympia. So have we talked before? Because I'm born and raised in Olympia. So I don't know if you knew that or not. Yeah, I'm born and raised there. My family's still there. My brother lives there. My parents still live there. Actually, they're living in Alaska for a year right now, but I went to Northwestern High School. So go Rams. She left Houston, Texas. Okay. I've lived down in that area of the country before. I lived in Louisiana, North Louisiana before, so definitely familiar with that weather down there. So cool. All right, we'll go ahead and get rolling here. So once again, everybody, welcome to the presentation. If you haven't met me before, most of you know who I am. I'm Brian Fouts. And the topic for today is a little known strategy that when you discover this, it kind of shows you how people from, I say this all across the nation are transforming their financial futures by following this one method. And when you look at what's going on around the world, the economy right now, it's kind of a very important topic, I believe, because there is some changes are coming, and this is something that can really help you during these times. As a lot of people that I know that I work with that had the same concept in place in the last big recession of the '08, they did very well, especially following that time because of this one concept. So now, the firm that I'm associated with, the brand is called the Money Multiplier. Obviously, you guys know me from the Elevation Group and Living Legacy, but this is called the Money Multiplier Method. And before we get into how this concept works, how this strategy works, I want to ask kind of a simple question. What in life should you control? So what in life are three things that we want to control in life? If you guys want to use a chat box, go for it. But what are one of the three things you think that we should all control in our lives? Now, when you think about this, like what are the three things we want to control? There's two big ones that come up for a lot of people. It's like I call it the average response. The first one is going to be money, right? We all want to control money because when we think about money, we associate, freedom with that. We associate, having nice things, right? We associate money with the things that money can buy. But then we think about what's the other main thing that we want to control in life? Well, money, by the way, can come and go. You lose it, you gain it back. I've lost everything twice in my life. I don't recommend going through that. It's painful, but you learn a lot. So I've seen money come back, right? But one thing that does not come back is time. Once time is gone, it does not come back. That makes sense, right? It's limited. We all have a limited amount of time. It's why people will pay you money for your time because they consider it very valuable. They'll pay you money for that time. So if you want to control time, what should you control first? Well, money, obviously, right? If you control money, control cash into your life, you can control time. And so for me, by the way, my biggest thing that I want to control is time. Money, yeah, but I love controlling time. It's why if you've been on some of my presentations before, I'm doing them while traveling. I'm doing them in a motorhome. I'm doing them, from somewhere else because I like to have experiences. I like to travel with my family in our RV, but I can do what I'm doing right now with you guys here on this call anywhere. It doesn't matter where I'm at. And I've built my life and my businesses and my experiences around that kind of control of time. But once again, I've had to control money first to be able to do that. But there's one thing that you want to make sure that you can control before these first two things, and that is your mindset. You want to control the mindset, because if you don't have the right mindset around money, your money mindset, you can't control money, and therefore it's very hard to control time. So mindset is one of the big things, and it's something we're going to be talking about on this call today. So that, because when we talk about the infinite banking concept, which is what we're going to be talking about here today, you got to make sure that you understand it from the mindset perspective first. Now, this is a quote that I want to start off with here. This is a great quote, and it's from Will Rogers, and it says, "The problem in America isn't so much what people don't know, it's what people think they know that just ain't so." And I like that because it's true. A lot of us have been taught a certain way around money, a certain way to think about wealth that just, in my opinion, is not true. So as we go through this presentation, just keep an open mind as to what we're talking about. Because if you have a certain way around money that this is not in alignment with, you're going to battle inside your head. So just keep an open mind. Right now, what I want you to think about right now is this. So let's say here in the US, United States or Canada, let's say you got 100 18-year-olds and you put them all into a room and you gathered all of these 18-year-olds up and you asked every single last one of them, where will you be at retirement age? Do you think they're going to say, "Oh, I'm going to be dead broke"? Of course not. They're not going to say that. They're going to say, "I'm going to be wildly successful. I'm going to have a successful business. I'm going to be a millionaire or a billionaire," whatever it is, right? Now, let's fast forward though to retirement age. When those kids reach retirement age, the fact of the matter is that 5% or 5 out of those 100 would be financially secure at retirement age. How is that possible? How is it possible that here in the land of the free, right, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, that only 5% of the population is going to be financially secure at retirement age? And I don't mean financially free, by the way. I mean secure. Financial freedom is actually about, it's less than 1%, by the way. So the question is, do you want to be one of the 5% or the 95? If you guys want to answer, I mean, if you guys want to answer yes in the chat box, if you want to be one of those five, let me know, because that's what we're going to be talking about here today is what are strategies that those 5% people use to be one of those five, okay? And obviously that's what we want to be. All right, so once again, keep that open mind. Now, by the way, that stat, it comes from the Social Security Administration, where they say, you can go look it up, they say that 5 out of 100 people will be financially secure at retirement age. So let's be one of those five. Now, for those of you that don't know who I am, I'm going to go through this really quickly. So, because this is not about me, but I wanted you to know who I am, of course. So I went to Washington State University. Ed probably knows where that's at. Go Cougs. Got a degree in construction management, and because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. That's what I was told was the way things work. Go to school, get good grades, get a job, etc. And I found out that was the hard way. For me, it was the hard way. I was raised, lower income back in the day. I remember getting up in the mornings, starting a fire to, get some heat going in the house when it was 30 degrees outside. I did not like that, by the way, at all. But I followed that traditional path through life and went to school, got the job, had that job. I was saving money into that 401k, and I watched it go up, and then I watched it completely crash by 40%. And this is kind of crazy. But I had the house with the mortgage. I had the growing family. Had the car loans, the credit cards, all that kind of stuff. And I thought I had the American dream because that's what I was being told, but it felt like the American nightmare, to be honest, because I felt like I was just barely keeping up with everything. And fast forward, what ended up happening is I was in this doctor's office one day, and there was on the coffee table, there was magazines, and one of them was a financial magazine. And I was like, oh, okay, picked it up and leafed through it. Found this article talking about the wealthy, and it said that the millionaire, the most millionaires know their net worth. And I sat back and said, well, I don't know my net worth at all. So I went and calculated out what that was, and it was a negative number. After working for over 10 years in an industry, I had a negative net worth, and it wasn't going to get any better. And I was like, that just makes no sense. This does not feel right. And so I thought I should do something different, but it took a catalyst to make me take that first step. And what happened is my grandfather, by the way, and for Ed, if he's still on, he was the football coach for Northwestern High School back in Olympia. And he was renowned. I mean, everybody knew him in the community. He was one of the coaches for the sports there and stuff. And people loved him. And he worked hard. And he worked so hard that he worked longer into his late 60s, because he wanted to retire and then go travel around the country, the West Coast, seeing his grandkids' sporting events. And that's what he did. He retired, I think it was in his mid to late 60s, maybe no, mid 60s, and bought a motorhome. Then with my grandmother, his wife, they traveled, but in a very short period of time, less than 2 years, he got sick. He got Parkinson's, and it was very aggressive. And he had some other complications. His kidneys ended up failing, went on dialysis, and then passed away. And he didn't have that retirement that he dreamed of. He didn't have that whole, like all that experience that we all think of. And so it really kind of kicked me off. And so that's really what started my journey. So I really started to really think about how can I do things differently. I left my career, started becoming an entrepreneur, started investing strategically to the point where eventually I acquired some businesses. I grew some businesses. This one was actually an Inc. 5000 business that I acquired years ago, grew it up, and it was did over $2 million in the middle of COVID, by the way, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so I've done some fun things because anybody can say anything on the internet, right? So this is just one of the businesses that I've owned. Here's another one right here. I own a golf ball business. So I've done a lot of stuff on the entrepreneurial side of stuff. But more importantly, what this has allowed me to do, as I said, is control one thing, and that for me is time. So I like cars. Some of you know that, but these are just some of the things I've done over the last, call it 10 years by being able to control the things in my life and control money and time. So some of what I've done, but this has also allowed me to really share what I do. So I've shared this concept and other concepts in front of live groups. I've shared it like I'm doing with you guys right now on a live presentation. I've done this presentation multiple times. I did it actually a couple times this week already with other groups. I love to share and teach this kind of stuff. It's just one of the joys that I get about what I do. Now, what I want you to understand about this concept, we're going to be talking about here today, it's not new. This is not a new concept. It's been around for a very long time, several hundred years. And there's a lot of guys that we know that have been using this, a lot of people. So who are they? Well, a lot of you have heard of Robert Kiyosaki in his book, Second Chance, which I have sitting right here. Actually, I have it sitting right here on my floor. This is a great book, by the way. He talks about this concept, infinite banking, in his book, Second Chance. Tony Robbins talks about it in his book, Money, Master the Game. Talks about this concept inside there. Then, of course, Becoming Your Own Banker, Unlock the Infinite Banking Concept by R. Nelson Nash. That is sort of like the foundational book that really started this whole concept back in the late 90s. So Nelson Nash really popularized this. I have that book right here as well. And then a couple other ones. So these are some of my mentors and partners. So Brent Kessler and Chris Naga wrote a book called Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. And Chris wrote a book called The Private Money Guide, which they use this concept and talk about how it can be used to build wealth. And if you guys want the bottom two, I think I have the Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery and the Private Money Guide. I have those on PDF if you guys want them. Actually, I'll put my email address in here. And then if you guys want to, just let me know. That's one of my email addresses. Just send me an email and I'll send those to you via email PDF, those bottom ones. All right, now, and by the way, I read Becoming Your Own Banker like years ago, and that's how I first learned about this whole concept, was that book right there. So definitely recommend reading that one. Now, who has used this strategy in history? So let's think about who has used this. So Harbaugh, so Coach Jim Harbaugh, I say his last name. So I think it was Michigan, the college used what's called cash value life insurance concept to pay him a multi-million dollar salary and bonus. They use this concept to do that. Pretty powerful how they did it. So they've used that. This guy, you guys probably have heard about this guy. He's kind of not in the news very much anymore, Mr. President Joe Biden. When he became president, he had to disclose that he has 4 of these policies. And you'll probably understand why these people have these ones here in a second. Walt Disney. So Walt Disney, when he was trying to start Disneyland, he could not get any financing from the banks. This is way back in the, oh gosh, was it the 30s? I can't remember when he started that whole thing. But he couldn't get any financing. But he had one of these concepts in place, the infinite banking concept. He went and borrowed from this to start Disneyland. So we would not have Disneyland or Disney World as we currently know it, potentially, without this concept. McDonald's, actually, it's kind of funny. So Ray Kroc, when he partnered with the McDonald's brothers and eventually took them over, but he used this his policies, this concept, to fund McDonald's during the first like 8 years when they're expanding, to help with cash flow, salaries, those kinds of things, to grow that. So without this concept, we might not have McDonald's as we currently know it either. The Pampered Chef, she used some of this to start that brand, the Pampered Chef brand, which of course Warren Buffett got it for 1.5 billion. Pretty good return on your money right there. And then, of course, lots of families, wealthy families, have used this for over 200 years. The JPs, the Morgans, Chases, the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers really did a very good job using this concept and use it, of course, to this day. the Harrises, and now you. So now, before we get into the how this thing works, what does infinite banking do for you? How's it going to benefit you? So let's go ahead and look at how this thing can work. So with infinite banking in place, it creates guaranteed generational wealth, tax-free, by the way, day one. Now, I don't know of any other concept that does that. So think of like a real estate or a 401k, IRA, those kind of things, pensions even. They don't have guaranteed generational wealth the day you start doing them. They don't have that I'm aware of. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's pretty powerful right there. It allows your money to grow uninterrupted, compounded for the rest of your life, guaranteed. Once again, I love the word guaranteed if you guys can't tell, but these are things that really help you build wealth when you have guarantees versus volatility or risk. Okay. But uninterrupted compounding interest, we're going to talk more about that. It is very powerful how it works. It takes control of your money away from the big banks and Wall Street and put the control into your hands. Remember at the beginning of this, if you guys weren't on it, I talked about the three things you want to control: your mindset, your money, and your time. Well, this allows you to control your money. If your money is sitting in, 401ks in Wall Street, it's in an IRA, it's in a bank, you essentially have given control away to somebody else. So this is a way to take back that control. It protects your money from lawsuits, bankruptcy, divorce, and court orders and creditors in most states, by the way. So protection and, by the way, privacy. This is a private strategy versus other things like a 401k, IRA. Those are public. It allows you to be the bank for things that you may normally use a bank for. So think of things such as like real estate investing, paying for college, cars, right? Car loans, homes, investments for things like, obviously real estate, but other investment strategies, retirement, while still having all the benefits listed above. So one of the things I like about infinite banking that I really kind of hammer on a lot is that it's not just one thing working for you, it's multiple things at the exact same time. So think about this. Would you like to have all of these things happening for you at the same time? If you want, give me a one in the chat box, give me a yes if that makes sense. Having all of these, not just one or the other, but all of these at the same time, helping you build wealth. Would that help you build wealth faster? Absolutely, of course it would. That's why we do this. Okay. All right, now as we go through this, if you guys want, ask questions, put them in the chat box. You can send them to me privately, but don't hesitate to ask questions. If you do ask, I will actually answer them live as we're going through this on the fly. So don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions as we do this. Now, one thing I want to really kind of illustrate really quickly is an analogy. So who learns quickly? Well, kids. Kids learn very quickly. When you learn to ride a bicycle, once you learn how to ride that bicycle, you don't really lose that skill. When you hop on a bicycle, maybe it's been 5 years, you can typically pick it up pretty quick, right? You pedal, you go forward, turn the handlebars to the left, you go to the left. But what if the bicycle didn't work that way? So what if it was the backwards bicycle? Now this, by the way, is a real thing. You can go to Google and Google it after the call, after this, but it's called the backwards bicycle. It's hilarious. And so the backwards bicycle, when you turn the handlebars to the left, the tire goes to the right. And the video is hilarious. The guy hops on and tries to ride it, and he immediately is like falling over because he's trying to ride it like a traditional bicycle. But after practice, he changes the way he thinks about riding a bike. All of a sudden, he can ride the backwards bicycle. He turns the handlebars to the left, tire goes to the right, but he can balance it out. He learned how to ride the backwards bicycle. Now, what do you think happened, though? This is pretty funny. What do you think happened when he got back on a regular bicycle? He falls over. Now he can't ride a regular bicycle. Now, the infinite banking concept or money is the same thing. We are taught a certain way around money. That's the regular bicycle. But once you learn how money really works, once you learn about the infinite banking concept, it's hard to go back to that regular way of riding a bicycle or thinking about money because your mind is open, your eyes are open to how it really works. So once again, keep an open mind. And the one thing we're going to be talking about quite a bit is where does your money go first? Where your money goes first is so important. Okay. Now let's think about this. Now, why aren't more people successful? So this is the mindset stuff, by the way. So the mysteries of money. So what are the things that kill wealth? Well, taxes. I don't mind paying taxes, but I love paying less a lot more, right? Inflation, that hidden tax, by the way, that is caused by the Federal Reserve and the banking system, steals your wealth if you can't keep ahead of it. Volatility, by the way, risk up and down the markets steals wealth because when you have downtimes, you're not earning money. When it has uptimes, it's great, but then you have the downtimes. Interest. The average family or household, by the way, before COVID was paying around, I think it was $19,000 of interest per year before COVID, and it's gone up since then. Mindset. Mindset's a big one. So following that status quo, you get stuck into that, hey, the Joneses, right? Fear of missing out. Fear of missing out causes us to do a lot of things with money that we shouldn't be doing with money. Like I've known so many people that had that fear of missing out with like crypto as an example. Put a bunch of money in, lost a bunch of money. Life, life happens, right? Life in general just happens. And then, of course, what we're taught around money, which is, by our family, our friends, our acquaintances, our network, their employers, the government, social media, that, right? That really can ruin wealth. Now, the mysteries of money. So what is the definition of money? So when we think of money, just think of it as a means of exchange. That's it. It's a means of exchange. Okay. What company uses compound interest? So think about that. Now, most people think that banks will use compound interest. They do not, by the way. They charge you interest, but they don't use it themselves in the same way. Because if you write your name on like $100 bill, gave it to the teller, do they put it in a box in the back in the safe with your name on it? No. They put it into motion. They make money multiple times, but we're not talking about compound interest, but how they make money. Think about this. Now, is your dollar worth more today or in the future? So did a dollar bill buy you more candy bars 20 years ago than it does today? Of course it did. It buys you more today than it does down the road. So your dollars are more valuable today than they are down the road in the future. Okay. Will taxes go up or down? They're going to go up. We know that, right? Think about that, right? They go up typically almost every single year, it seems like, right? Now, here's a great question to think about. So let's say you're a farmer. Do you want to pay taxes on the seed or on the harvest? Well, typically we want to pay them on the seed, on the dollars today, right? Not down the road. We want to pay it today, get it out of the way, and then have that money work for us and not to pay taxes on it. So most people understand that you want to pay taxes on the seed, not the harvest. But here's the thing, if you have like an IRA or a 401k, things like that, you're giving up dollars today for weaker dollars in the future. And you're compounding the tax because the tax is always going to be there. And when you do pay the tax, you're going to pay it on a larger balance, not the small amount. Kind of yikes, kind of scary, right? So think about that for a second, right? Also, would you wait to eat bread or drink milk? It's kind of a weird question, but as an example, would you wait 5 or 10 or 20 years to drive a car or live in a house that you buy? No, of course not. If we're going to buy a car, we're going to drive the car, unless it's an investment, of course, like a classic. But no, you're going to want to drive that car. You're not going to buy a home and let it sit there vacant for 10 years and then go live in it. Yet here's the thing. So we do things with money, meaning we put it into these vehicles and we don't touch it for 30 years. We do things with money that we don't do with things that money buys. So that's a very interesting, powerful concept right there. So understand that, because what we want you to do is use good dollars today and then pay that back with weaker dollars in the future. We've been trained our entire lives to do the opposite of what I just said. We've been trained to do the opposite. Okay. Now, what do you know about your retirement account? Right? Who controls the money in your retirement account? Is it you? In most cases, no, it's not. It's Wall Street. It's, the government. It's the IRS. They are in control. They have their hands on your money. So once again, I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, control of money. So we want to take back that control. Now, I know I kind of just threw a lot at you with these last few slides, but once again, we're talking about thinking differently around money, thinking about different ways of approaching building wealth or investing. So challenge those old concepts, understand how money really works. Now, this is a great analogy about understanding how money flows. So let's use an example of buying a car. Now we're going to start getting into the banking concepts here. How do you buy a car typically? Well, maybe you go get a loan, maybe you pay cash. So let's say you're going to go buy a $25,000 car, and let's just say that you happen to have $25,000 of cash sitting in your local bank earning 4%. Okay. Now you go to the bank and say, Mr. Banker, I'm going to take my cash out of the bank and go buy this car with cash. But the banker says, wait a second, stop. Before I let you do that, let me give you an opportunity or an option. Rather than taking the cash out and losing the 4% growth, leave the cash in the account earning 4%, and I'll give you a loan of $25,000. I'll use the $25,000 of cash as the collateral for the loan, and I'll give you $25,000 at 6% interest. Okay. So 60 months paying that back. That's going to be around $483 per month paying back that loan to the bank for that car note. Okay. That is going to, and then by the way, in the bank, you're earning 4% on the $25,000. Now, the question I ask people is, does this make sense? Would you want to do this? Would you make money doing this? And most people would say, well, no, because I'm losing 2%, 6%, and 4%. I'm losing money right there. Well, let's look at the future value of the payments. The future value of the payments back to the car note is going to be around $29,000. That's what you're going to pay back over time. The money in your account that's earning 4% over the same time period will grow to $30,525, meaning that you made $1,526. You made money. So that's when you're only on one side of the transaction, right? The bank is holding your money. They gave you a note. But what we're talking about with the infinite banking concept is you're on both sides of the equation. You're the party on both sides of this. That's really where then you can accelerate this even more. But my point to this is that you can earn more money, make money, earning 4% while paying 6%. So once again, when you think about that, what are we taught? We're not taught this. People don't typically understand that. Well, wait a second. If my money's doing that and I'm paying 6, I'm making more money. Yes, you are. Okay. All right. Now the money multiplier method. So here's the 3 things we're going to cover next. So one is the machine. What is the infinite banking machine? What's it look like? We're going to go through some examples. We're going to talk about the marathon, okay, because this is not a sprint, right? This is not hit the easy button and we're a millionaire tomorrow, right? This is a marathon. And then the last one is the millionaire method. How do we use this concept to build wealth, build generational wealth, and really accelerate our wealth building? So now let's look at the machine. So here's what I want you to understand. So think of the infinite banking concept as a car. What does a car have? The car has tires, it has wheels, or it has windows, wipers, a radio, seats, mirrors, all that kind of stuff. That's the infinite banking concept. But for that car to go down the road, to drive down the road, what does it have to have? It has to have an engine. So in the infinite banking concept, the engine in this case is what is called a permanent dividend paying whole life policy, specially designed with a mutual insurance company. That is the engine that allows that infinite banking concept to exist, to go down the road. That's my analogy. Okay. Now you might be thinking, well, Brian, what do you mean by life insurance? Maybe I don't need it. I'm young, I'm healthy, whatever it is. Well, once again, we're talking about the infinite banking concept. The life insurance is just the vehicle that allows it to function and exist. That's all it really is. Okay. Now there's lots of layered benefits that we'll get into as we go through this, but the other thing I want you to think about is like, well, why would I want to do this? Why would I want to have a dividend paying, specially designed whole life policy? Who else does this? Well, we talked about some of the wealthy people, but guess who the biggest buyer of whole life insurance is in the US? It is banks. Big banks own more life insurance than they do their real estate and buildings combined. And they quadrupled their holdings since 2016. Gee, I wonder if they know something that we don't, right? They love this concept because they can take your money and put it into this vehicle, which is growing for them, guaranteed, and also is a liquid asset. They love doing this concept, by the way. So we're just going to bypass the banks and do the same thing that they do. So once again, can you make money earning 4% while paying 6%? Well, I showed the math on this. The answer is yes, you can, right? By being on both sides of the equation, you can even do more. So let's understand what a bank does. So how does a bank function? Because in this scenario, the bank has your $25,000. Okay. Do you think they're just sitting on that money? Absolutely not. Because if you do the math, well, if the bank just sat there with that $25,000 and gave you the loan of $25,000 at 6%, the bank would lose money. They would actually lose money, by the way. So how does a bank make money? Because they're not just sitting around doing just that one transaction. Let's think about that. Let's say you give a bank $100,000 and let's say it's at 4%. That is a liability to the bank because they now owe you that $100,000 because it's on deposit with them. So that's a liability. But what do they do with the money? They create assets. They're going to go loan that back out, maybe at 7% on a home loan. But what does the seller do when they get the cash from the home loan? Okay. Well, the seller puts it right back into the bank again, typically. Okay. What's the bank do? Same thing. They turn around, lend it right back out again, maybe on a car note, maybe at 8%, something like that. What's the car company do? Goes right back into the bank again, repeats. goes to maybe a home remodel. What's the contractor do? What do the contractor's workers do? What do the suppliers do with the money they get? Goes right back into the bank again, repeats, debt consolidation loan. What's the credit card company do? Goes right back into the bank. So the bank, though, which I want you to note, though, the bank is in control of every transaction on this whole thing right here. They're the ones that holds the paper. They are in control. Because they're in control, they make 500% more than they're paying you, because they're paying you for, maybe they're making about 8% total, or sorry, 20% total on all these transactions. They're making about 500% more. Now, I didn't just make this up, by the way, and I'll show you why in a sec. But here's the thing to consider too. How much risk did the bank take? Well, it's not their money in the first place. They're lending out your money. So are they at risk? Not really. But here's the thing. Now, banks do something called fractional reserve lending. That is risky. And they involve in other things behind the scenes that are very risky that we would never recommend doing. But from the surface level, they're not taking a lot of risk because it's your money. Think of a 401k. What's the risk of the 401k provider like Fidelity has? It's not their money. If they lose it all, it's your money, not theirs, right? They're making fees no matter what. So think about control, right? And who's in control of the transaction. Now, banks make between 400 and 1,300% on the money you leave there. And you can go to bauerfinancial.com and look it up. In fact, I think on that link, you can go to like any bank and look at a period of time, and it will show you the amount they made on your money. So banks make a lot of money on your money. So what are we talking about? Taking back control of the banking functions in our lives so we have the same benefits. Now, to understand why you want to do this or how this looks, we got to understand really how most people spend our money. How do we spend our money? So let's look at that really quick. So a dollar comes in, where does it go? For every dollar, around 20 cents goes to automobiles, gas, upkeep, things like that. 30 cents of every dollar that you make goes to housing. 40 cents of every dollar you make goes to everything else, travel, entertainment, food, clothing, that kind of stuff. So 90 cents of every dollar you make goes to somebody else. Yes, it provides value to you, of course, but it's going to somebody else first. Okay. And then 10% goes to savings. Now, by the way, I don't think it's 10% right now. Before COVID, it was like 5 or 6%. Then it went up and now has dropped down drastically. I think it might be a negative number right now, which is kind of a little unnerving. So as an example, also, when you go and talk to a financial advisor, what are they talking to you about? They're talking to you about your savings number. How do you put that into higher risk things to make more money so that it can grow faster? They're not talking to you about the other things their money is going into. So that's what we want to talk about. So let's reverse this whole thing. Let's start with and assume that you've got 10% going to savings. So as I said, 20 cents of every dollar goes to automobiles. Okay. Now of that 20 cents, 5 cents goes to interest. Okay. So let's take that interest and put it back into your savings. Okay. Now let's look at the housing. Same thing. 30 cents of every dollar goes to housing, but 25 cents of that 30 cents is interest. Now, why is it so much? Why is 25 cents of it interest? That's because of amortized mortgages, which are, by the way, not good. About 75 to 78% of every payment goes to interest for the first 7 years. So that's why it's 25 cents. Now, 40 cents of every dollar goes to everything else. Around 5 cents of that goes to interest. Put that back in. So when you start to gain back control of the banking functions in your life, you can start to see how if you benefit, you're going to actually have a lot more wealth, a lot more savings. Does that make sense? So this is why we want to look at this, because once you start to understand where's our money going, if it's going to the creditors, the debtors, all that stuff first, you're losing the opportunity cost of that money. So we want to gain back control. So let's look at an example. Now, the example I want to give here is buying a car, because we've all bought cars before. Most times we've bought cars. Let's look at how we can get all the money back for every car you'll ever buy, drive, and own for the rest of your life. Now, by the way, this can be real estate. I'm going to use a car as an example. Okay, now before we get into that, though, the example, I want to make sure that we look under the hood of what infinite banking is, what the engine is. So it's, as we said, it's a life insurance policy, specially designed. So on the right-hand side here, you're going to see what is called a policy illustration. Not going to get into too much of this stuff, but what you'll see here is you'll see like the policy year, age, deposit. Deposits, I'm going to talk about in a moment. This is what's big, very powerful, is the cash value. Inside these specially designed policies, you have what is called cash value, which you can borrow out of the policy. Okay, so keep that in mind. So those are going to be called premium deposits. Now, because when you think about life insurance, a lot of people think of, oh, I've got a bill, an expense, a payment I got to make for like, car insurance, home insurance, uh, health insurance, that kind of stuff. But with these, we call them premium deposits because when you put them in, you can borrow it back out again. It's liquid. Okay. Now, not going to say it's 100%, but you can borrow it back out again. That's why we call it a deposit. Age doesn't matter. Now, yes, when you get very later in life, this might not be the best fit. But here's the thing. I just did one on someone who is 66. I've done them on people in their 70s, but you can also do these things on other people and still control the asset. So I always say age is not the focus here. Next up is death benefit. When people think of life insurance or think of it, they think, oh, death benefit. We're not going to be focusing on the death benefit mainly throughout this because that's a benefit, but it's not the living benefits. We want to focus on the living benefits, not the death benefits. That's a bonus, but it's not the main thing. Okay. All right. So let's look at this example here. All right. So we're going to assume that we do a policy, an infinite banking policy, and we're going to put in $10,000 a year for 7 years. Okay. Now, as you do that, your cash value is going to grow inside the thing. It's going to earn dividends. It's going to start compounding and growing more and more every single year as you do this. Now, in year 3, we're going to go to our bank and we are going to take a loan out of $25,000. Now, because it's a loan that we control, we're going to treat it the same way as we would any other bank loan. We're going to pay it back with interest. We're going to do it at, let's say, $500 per month for 5 years. That's $6,000 per year. So what does the math look like? So in the first 7 years, we put in $70,000 into this policy. We put in $30,000 for the loan payback, which is $100,000. But we also had $25,000 cash in hand. So in reality, how much did we put in? We put in $75,000 because we put in 100 and took 25,000 out as cash. Now we have recaptured 91 cents of every dollar we have put into this thing so far because we have a $67,000 cash value and we put in $70,000. We've recaptured most of that money. Now let's look at the next set of years. And by the way, these are very conservative numbers. Yeah, Jerry. Yeah, they're, oh, hey, buddy. See you on the island, man. It's cool to see you, man. So by the way, I know Jerry. So the next set of years, let's look at years 8 through 12. So we're going to assume that years 8 through 12, we put nothing back into the policy. Okay. Nothing goes back in. And we're going to do the same thing, though, that we did in the first 7 years. We're going to do another car purchase. So in year 8, we buy another car for $25,000. And yet what you'll notice, the cash value in the account keeps going up. Even though we're not putting anything else into this policy, we're not funding this thing, it's still going up in value, the cash value, which is amazing, by the way. Now, we also pay back the loan just like we did in the first one. And so what does the second set of years look like? This years 8 through 12. We put in 30. We borrowed 25. So we only put in $5,000 in years 8 through 12. But what happened to the cash value that we can use inside the policy? Well, it went up by $23,000. That's $67,000 to $91,000. It went up by $23,000, but we only put in $50,000 or $5,000 into the policy, and we have a car. So what does this look like? At the end of 12 years, and by the way, these are once again very conservative numbers. At the end of 12 years, you have put in, do the math, $75,000 in years 1 through 7, and $5,000 in years 8 through 12. That is $80,000 you put into this whole thing. What's the amount that you have that you can use to go build wealth or buy another car? It's $91,473, meaning that you have more wealth than you started with, and you own 2 cars 100% outright. So if you just paid cash for the cars, you'd have 2 cars, you own them outright, and that's it. With infinite banking, when you fund this way, your money grew and you have 2 cars at the exact same time. It's a very different way of thinking, right? So you made money while buying 2 cars. Now let's talk about the kind of the quick rules of infinite banking. So one is pay yourself first. Second one is pay yourself with interest or pay back your loans with interest. And then recycle and recapture your money. What that means is before money goes out of your hands into, say, like a debt or something, other vehicle that takes that money, capture it first and then recycle the cash flow back through policies because that's how you build wealth. So this works for cars. What else? Now, by the way, if you take that same example I just did, and I'll show some examples of this here in a moment, If you'd done it into something like real estate that cash flows, the numbers would be even better. So it gets even more powerful. Okay, so let's look at your debts. So debts is one of the most common things that people use infinite banking to recapture, so to speak. So I'm going to show you a quick example. Once again, this is a very, very conservative example. So we're going to look at a doctor, 45-year-old male, has $478,000 in debts. Total payments are almost $6,000 per year. It's $5,777 per month, or per month, by the way, per month, not per year, and $69,000 a year that he's paying out to debts. So if this person paid off these debts just as they're scheduled, right, their payments, it would take them 19 years to pay all of that back. So let's look at how this would be different with infinite banking. Now, before I go into the numbers, a couple things to consider. One, this is just this person's numbers. They're not yours. Yours will be different. That's fine. They're smaller, they're bigger, it doesn't matter. This person also has cash flow in their life. So they have $25,000 that's coming in every year that's going to other things. Maybe it's going to maybe a 401k, or maybe it's going to savings, maybe it's going to a college fund, something. It's going somewhere else. And they're going to redirect that $25,000 into an infinite banking policy. Okay. So this is what it looks like. So in year one, they start with an annual premium of $25,000. Conservatively, very conservatively, in the first 30 days, they have access to around $14,863 of cash value they can take out of the policy. Once again, very conservative numbers there. It's very low compared to what we typically do. But once again, I want to be conservative here. Okay. So what do? Well, they knock out the Discover's card, the Lowe's card, and part of Nordstrom's by taking that cash value out as a loan. Okay. Also, what happens is their monthly payments going to those debts just got reduced by $448. Now, what do? So now let's go to year two. So in year two, you put in another $25,000 deposit. Your cash value goes up by $16,571. But here's also what we did in the previous 12 months. That $448, we recaptured that. Remember, recapture and recycle? We recapture that $448 by putting that money back into the policy loan. So we pay back the loan that we took out, which then increases the amount of cash value available by $5,374. So the total cash value in the policy that we have in our infinite banking concept is $21,945. So we borrow that out at the beginning of year two. Nordstrom card, Wells Fargo, private loan, and part of the BMW get wiped out. Okay. Our debt goes down to $378,000, and our monthly payments to the debts is reduced now by $1,917. Year three, same thing happens. 25 goes into the policy as a deposit premium. Cash value goes up by 25,000 now, 25,541. The payments of $1,917 back to our policy loan is $23,004. So now the total cash we have is $48,545. So what do? Same thing again. We borrow that out of the policy. We wipe out the BMW, West Marine, and part of the condo. Our debts are down to $283,000, and our monthly payments have been reduced by $3,677. Okay, seeing how this is going pretty quick all of a sudden? Now, before I go to year four, quick question. How much have we put into this policy? We've put in $75,000. How much have we taken out of it? Approximately $55,000 in loans to ourselves. So the question is, how much is left in your policy? Okay, how much is left? Okay, some people will say it's $20,000 because you took 55 out. Not with the way we do these. In fact, it's still $75,000. 75,000 is in there. 75,000 is earning you dividends, by the way, which are compounding uninterrupted every single year for the rest of your life. Okay, at the exact same time, we're also borrowing money out of the policy. Very cool. So now let's go to year four. Same thing. 25 goes in, $26,304 is now available as cash value. Your payments are $3,677 back to yourself equals $44,000 and change. Now you have cash value of $70,000 that you can leverage out. You go and do that. The condo gets wiped out. Our debt goes down to $187,000. Now, one thing to kind of note right here at this point is that now in year five, the deposit goes in, cash value grows by $27,000 now, but the payments back to ourselves doesn't change. Okay. And the monthly payments didn't go down because the condo and the house are amortized mortgages, loans, right? So when you pay down the principal, the payments don't change. So in this regard, in that case, when you paid down the balance of the condo, it doesn't change the monthly payments. Okay, but now now you've got 71,000 of cash in year 5. You borrow that out, wipe out the condo, wipe out the house, debt goes down, monthly payment drops by by $4,556, which now you pay yourself back again. So now in year 6, we're going to do something a little bit different though. I want to show this because it's a little bit different. We say, hey, we're going to reduce the premiums on our first policy. You can do that, by the way. So we reduce it down to $10,000. The cash value goes up by $13,000 and change, still going more than you're putting in. We do a second policy because maybe our net worth has gone up. Maybe we've got a raise, cash flow is going up, whatever it is. So we do another policy at 25,000. And so year 1, 14,863 of cash value available. Okay. Now the payments back to yourself equals 54,000 and change. So total cash value is $82,633. And yet your debt is only $76,000. So you take a portion of the cash value, pay it back, you're debt free, and now your cash flow is now freed up of $5,777. In year 7, what you do is you'll take that cash flow, pay back the outstanding policy loans, you'll be 100% debt free. You'll have cash value of, I think it's a couple $100,000 or more net, I think, in policies, whatever that, I think it's about, yeah, about a couple $100,000 that you can now use to build wealth, go do real estate, invest, things like that. And you have no debt and you have free cash flow of 5,000 and change left. And you did that in 7 years versus 19 years. So that's just using a very simplified version of infinite banking. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, Brian, I have no idea what you just said. That sounds complicated. We actually do this for you. So I have access to software that maps all that out. It's called the Debt Blaster. What you do is you take your debts, you take the policies that we're looking to build, and my team then works the numbers and produces a report for you so that you can see what it would look like for debt payoff, and then what it would look like for building wealth beyond that. And it's amazing. It is incredible when you see this in real time. It's amazing. And so we have what's called an IMapping team or an implementation team that is part of our overall group. And well, we help you build out how to use the policy. So if it's investing, if it's paying off debts, whatever it is, we actually help you map that out so that you don't have to question how to use your infinite banking policy. Now, let's go to the millionaire method now, because the question then comes up, what if I have no bad debt? What if I don't need a new car? Can I still benefit from privatized banking? And should I become my own banker? Because here's the fun thing. Absolutely yes. Because once you get rid of those debts or get rid of those things, now this is where the fun begins. This is when you start building wealth and building that legacy. So what are some other things that you can use infinite banking for when you're on this side of the equation now? So active real estate investors, wholesalers, flippers, buy and holds, commercial property, apartments, mobile homes, etc. Private funds, by the way. So if you have private funds, you can use those for lending on real estate, create some passive cash flow from real estate, by the way. Business owners use these for revolving lines of credit, things like that. Maybe even starting a business. Stocks and options traders do this sometimes. If you're doing day trading quite a bit, people do this to use that as their capital. As I said, startups do this, and then equipment flipping. So we have a private group that does private lending, but they also do other strategies such as equipment flipping. So it's like buying like a forklift, you renovate the whole thing and then lease it back out for cash flow. So it's an interesting concept as well. So what I want to do now is I want to give you some examples and show you some real numbers from real policies that are in place. So this is an example of using a private banking strategy for private money lending, because that's a big thing that we do here with my team at the Money Multiplier. So this is a policy. Now what you're going to see here is the contract premium year 1 is $150,000. And I'll explain some more about this, but once again, if you have questions, put them in the chat box, put them in the Q&A box. So this one is a $50,000 per year premium, and they're doing what's called a $100,000 lump sum or $100,000 dump in. So you can fund these policies up front with a large amount of money and then have a separate premium deposit. That's very attractive. I'll explain to you why in a little bit, but bottom line is it makes the policy very attractive, very efficient, and high growth very early on. So this person you can see has about 132,000 of cash value at the end of that first year. But here's why this is so amazing. So look at this. Let's fast forward down the road, because one thing you got to understand around infinite banking is that you do capitalize this thing. You have to capitalize the account. So that's going to happen, in the first few years. So we're going to capitalize this. So what I want to do though is show you how powerful this concept is the longer it is in place. So let's go to year 8 as an example. In year 8, the cash value, your bank grew by $66,722. But how much did you put in? You only put in $48,594, but it grew by 66,000. So what is that? That's a 37% cash on cash return. How many people here want to have a 37% cash on cash return? Most of us do, by the way, because that's very good. But let's introduce private lending. So let's assume, by the way, that you're going to private lend to yourself or for your money. Let's assume that you're going to do it at 12%. Okay, 12%. So you borrow money from your policy. So that's what's called a policy loan. Those loans have an interest rate that you pay back to the insurance company, by the way. Let's assume that's around 5%. Okay. So you borrow from that. What's the math look like? You lend the money at 12%. You're already making 37% in the banking system already, and you're paying 5% interest on the loan that you take out from your policy. So you're making 44% on your money, cash on cash return. So the question is, we did nothing different than where our money went first, but do you want to make 12% or 44%? Now, we have some members, and one of my actually colleagues, he was like, I'm not doing infinite banking, it makes no sense. And he's private lending at 12%. Then he realized, and it finally clicked for him, and he saw this. He's like, wait a second. And then he did that. Now he has about 7 policies. His cash on cash return is like over 300% now on some deals. It's incredible. So this can be a very powerful concept. But yes, 44% versus 12% just by having your money go through a policy first for infinite banking. Okay. Now I want to explain the why we talk about the uninterrupted compound interest, because that is a very powerful thing. So this is what it looks like. So if you have a policy, in this case, it's a $50,000 dump in or lump sum, and they're doing $5,895 per year as far as premiums go. They're paying that monthly at $491. So let's look at the years. In year 2, okay, they have a 26% cash on cash return. They are doing nothing with the money outside of the policy, by the way. This is just assuming the policy is by itself. And a 126% access to capital versus what they put in. But then it gets better and better. Year 10, 54% cash on cash, 154% access to capital. Year 20, 191% cash on cash, 291% access to capital. Year 30, 386% cash on cash return, and a 486% access to capital. So that is the power of uninterrupted compound interest. What do I mean by uninterrupted? Okay. So when you borrow from your infinite banking policy, you do not lose the growth. You get the same returns, the same dividends on your deposits as if you never borrowed the money. Your interest is uninterrupted versus if you have a 401k, you have a CD or cash in a bank account. If you take the money out of those, the balance goes down and the amount you earn is only on that reduced balance. That's called interrupted interest. So this is why uninterrupted is so powerful with this concept. Okay. Now let's talk about how you eat an elephant, or how you get to the top of the mountain. It's one bite at a time. It's taking that first step. So when you think about doing something like infinite banking, it's like, okay, I want to be at the top of the mountain. How do I get there? It's one step at a time. Okay. So we just want to keep that in mind. Next up, this machine, it works for debt, it works for expenses, vacations, home taxes, and everything else. It works for a lot of other things. So don't think that you're stuck with just one thing. You're almost, the sky is the limit. Like, what you can imagine doing this with is what you can do it with. Now, to really understand the power of using this in your life, let's look at an example of the homes that we looked at for the doctor that had all those debts. Remember, the house and the condo. So what if we continue to pay back the home and the condo as promised with the bank? Okay. So with the condo, it was $879, 251 months. That's $220,000. The house, $1,221 at 224 months. That's $273,000. Okay. You'd end up paying the bank, right? If you made those payments as they were scheduled, you'd pay the bank $493,000. Okay. Now, by using the method we're talking about, the infinite banking concept method, You have that money now in your account rather than the banker's pockets. But it gets even better. So because your policy has growth, right? Let's just assume 4%. Right now, it's actually higher than that, but let's just assume it's 4%. And let's say you left that money in your bank account, in your policy, right? And not in the bank's hands. It's going to gain interest now as you're doing this. Remember the example I gave where we recaptured that money. Well, now you've got that money in your account. So what would it look like? You'd have, by the way, paid back your own self, 344 and 405. So the amount of money that you're going to have inside your policy that's earning these dividends is going to grow to $749,000. That's if you put in the same amount of money, by the way. Okay. In the first example, you have paid the bank what was $449,000, right? In this example, just by having infinite banking in place, you'll have $749,000 of cash value, and you still own the house and the condo outright, which is a swing, by the way, of over 7 figures of net worth. Okay. So if it doesn't make sense to you, we map it out for you, what I just kind of said, because that can sound kind of complicated, but it literally is a swing of 7 figures because of the time frame, right? And compound interest. So this is why infinite banking completely changed the game when it comes to building wealth. Now, if you have questions on, well, Brian, what's that look like? Hey, I have an investment property. We have software that will map all this out so you're not guessing on how to flow the cash flow. Okay. All right. Now that you know this, should you do this? I believe that everybody that can do this should do it. Because if you don't, the amount of wealth that you're losing, you just saw the math right there. I just did the math. It was a swing of 7 figures, by the way. But that's just their example. It's going to be different for you. But if you're not, like, I want to teach this to everybody. I want to teach this to my grandkids, to my kids. I want to, because if we don't, what most people do is they find themselves, in financial slavery, by the way. And you don't even know that that's where you're at. But with this method, you can break those bonds and get back control. And I've seen it time and time again change so many lives. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of this. And so the way this works, there's nothing you ever buy or purchase. There's no cost to this kind of stuff. You and I would hop on a phone call. We would go through what this would look like for you, ask questions, get familiar with how this would work for you, and then go from there. So, and once again, there's nothing to ever buy or purchase. So, to schedule a call, by the way, and I have more slides. There's more slides and more things I want to clarify. There's a lot more benefits we haven't covered yet, but just want to get my link out there. It's brian.beyourownbanker.com. That's how you schedule a call with me, and I'll put that in the chat box here as well, just so you guys have it inside there. But that's the link that you would use to schedule a personal call with me. And I also put my email address once again inside there, so that if you want those books that I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, just send me an email and I will send you a link to those books. Okay. All right. So I like this picture. That's why I put it there. But when you have infinite banking, what starts to happen differently is that your money starts to work for you. That's something that when I worked with wealthy people, studied them, is they always want their money working for them. They don't mind working for money, but they like to have their money out there working for them. And so that's exactly what this does. It gets that working for you. Now, let's talk about some of the other benefits and things that are inside infinite banking that are really make it powerful. So one, we didn't talk about the death benefit. I'm going to get into that here in a moment. Loans. The loans, by the way, I'm going to go through those a little bit more, but they never have to be repaid. Yeah, you don't have to pay them back. The internal values grow tax-free. Remember, I said I don't mind paying taxes, but I like to pay less a lot more. And so the internal values grow tax-free. I mentioned the policies are exempt from judgments and liens in most states. If you want to know what states they are, just reach out to me. You can create tax-free income. Okay, that you can do that. So as the cash value grows, you can take that out via loans down the road. And by the way, loans are not taxable because they're not considered income and they don't have to be repaid, which I'll go into a bit more detail here in just a moment. Now, let's kind of talk about the generational wealth strategy aspect of infinite banking. So look at this example here. This is what's called a policy illustration. It's a female, age 42. This person is putting in $20,000 a year for 5 years. Then they drop it down to only $3,000. But here's what I want you to note. In year one, they put in $20,000 and the death benefit is $325,000 on this example here. So right off the bat, that's worth a lot more than they put in. And that's a guaranteed tax-free thing right there. But what do you notice? year over year, it grows more and more and more. So with infinite banking, when you have that death benefit, which is guaranteed tax-free at some point down the road, when you graduate, as we call it, it's always increasing. It's always going up, as is the net cash value, which is what you can borrow against. That's also going up. Okay. So that is one of the biggest aspects of infinite banking, this kind of a side benefit. It's also why a lot of big families, wealthy families do this, because they can get these on people when they're young, knowing that the wealth is going to be multiplied times 5 times 10 times 15 for that next generation. So they insure every generation so the next generation has more money. Pretty simple concept right there. What else? Policy loans. They are guaranteed. There's no qualifications. There's no credit check. Ask and you shall receive. Okay. By the way, to access them, you log in, say how much you want. They deposit into your account in most cases. That's typically how it works. Pretty simple. Okay. Your loans are private, by the way. They do not go on your credit report. And the policy itself is also private. It's a private contract with you and the insurance company. It's not a public one. Also, one thing is the contract that you have with the insurance company, who owns it? You do. Who owns a contract with a mortgage or a car loan or a credit card? The credit card company, the car company, the bank. They own that on you versus with this one, you own it on the insurance company. A little bit different. There's no minimum, maximum payments. You are in control of the loans. You set the loan payback. It can be zero, by the way. It can be as much as you want. If you miss a payment with a policy loan payment, nothing happens. Nobody's calling you. If you have a car, by the way, and a car loan with a bank or whatever, and you miss a payment, they take your car. Okay. With this, nothing happens. So you are the one in control. Next up, how can I fund my bank? My bank, my bank. How can I fund my bank? Well, you can do it. The premium deposits can be monthly, can be quarterly, can be annually, by the way. Okay. So what's the minimum and what's the maximum for premium deposits? And that's one of the things we get into on calls, but I want to share it with you here. So you can do a monthly, quarterly, annual. Also, the minimum is around 10 times your age per month. That's the recommended minimum to make infinite banking work. It can be lower sometimes though. The maximum depends upon the individual, depends on your age, your gross income, your liquidity, your liquid net worth, those kind of things. And so I work with you on those numbers. Okay. On top of the premium deposit, which is the monthly, quarterly, or annual numbers, which by the way, they go down, not up over the course of the policy. You can also do what's called a dump-in or a large upfront deposit, which is going to grow the cash value by a lot very quickly. Now, as you deposit money into these things, 50 to 90% goes to cash value within the first 30 days. So you're able to borrow from these things very quickly to do things like buy a car, pay down debts, do an investment very quickly. So you got a lot of cash value very early on in these policies. And then of course it grows and is more than you put in over time. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, why would I do this at the beginning if I'm only going to get, maybe 90% at the very beginning? Because as I'll show you here in a moment, you're going to get a different return later on. Would you put in $1 into a vehicle to get $3 back out of it? Yes, absolutely. That's a pretty phenomenal return, right? So that's what these can do. But it's going to take some time to capitalize the account first. But once again, keep in mind, you can use this day 1, day 30, year 30. All right. So here's an example of a policy. So this person is doing an annual premium. Remember I said they can be annually, monthly, etc. They're doing a 10,000 annual. They're doing a lump sum dump in of $50,000. So 60,000 goes in day 1. At the end of the first year, they have access to $55,000 of cash value. They can take that out and go do whatever they want with that. But in year 2, what happens? Year 2, another $10,000 goes in. But look at the numbers though. So it grew by $10,607. So you're literally getting more out of the policy than you're putting in on an annual basis already. Now, let's look at further down the road. In year 11, you put in $3,120, and yet the cash value went up by $10,590. Pretty much, it's a little over 3 times what you put into it. So once again, would you put in $1 to get 3 times back out? Absolutely. Now, yes, question I get is, do these policies, am I going to get more out of it than I put in? Yes. On this one right here, in year 5, you've put in $100,000, but the cash value that you can access is $101,000. And as you can see, every year it's more and more than what you put in, to the point where in year 11, it's 185,000 of cash value. You've only put it in 151,000, but in this entire time frame, you've had access to all of this to go do other things with and build wealth without impacting the growth you see on this page. So if that was sounding complicated, I clarified on the calls on 101, but that's essentially what is happening right here in this policy. Very, very good policy there. All right. So this is a quote by Warren Buffett, it's not my favorite quote, by the way, but it says, if poor people would just do what rich people do, they wouldn't be poor anymore. I prefer to say this. If poor people had the knowledge and access that the rich do, they wouldn't be poor anymore. And so on this call, what we're talking about is the knowledge and the access that the rich do so that you don't have to be poor anymore. So I kind of like to switch that one around a little bit. Now, a question I also get is, why should I work with you, Brian? Well, I've been teaching infinite banking for now, it's about 8 years. Been teaching this for quite some time. Had thousands of clients go and do this concept. We have an entire team, by the way, at the Money Multiplier that sets up infinite banking for you. So it's not like you're just working with just Brian and maybe one other person. No, we have a team of 30 to 40 people that support you and provide ongoing education. Our team, we are one of the largest, if not the largest, with the top 3 companies in the US doing infinite banking. So we are known for what we do. Because of that, we have a lot of clients. So I currently have over 100 in underwriting, going through the process. We do provide ongoing support, ongoing education. So we do live events every week. I did this presentation, by the way, to on a public group on Tuesday, by the way. I think it was on Tuesday, yeah. We do a live Ask Me Anything on Wednesdays where you can ask any questions you want about infinite banking or other things from our entire team. So we do ongoing education and services even after the policy is in place. And there's no cost to you. So there's nothing I'm ever going to charge you. I'm never going to ask you for money. Your only thing is the premium deposits for the policies. That's it. Okay. Another question I get quite a bit, I'll just cover it really quickly, is an indexed universal life, or IUL, or variable universal life, or VUL, infinite banking? Answer is no, it's not. IULs and term insurance pay some of the highest commissions out there. They are not infinite banking. They have some of the same features, but they don't have the same structure as infinite banking does. We do take about a 70% cut in commission to do infinite banking, so I take a big cut to do this, but it's fine because we're helping people do some pretty amazing things, and I can do volume because we have an entire team of people that do this with us. Yeah, so we take a pretty big cut in commission. And then our team, I only do infinite banking. So I don't do car insurance or home insurance. You'll never hear me say that I'm a life insurance salesman because I don't sell anything. I just teach it. And then of course people want to do it, so we help them do that. So there you go. So yeah, so we don't do IULs or VULs. Although a lot of people out there are pitching them as infinite banking. Our opinion is they are absolutely not. They are not the same thing. And in the coming years, if there's going to be any volatility in the markets, which people think there's going to be, I would not want to be holding an IUL because it is tied to the markets, which is why we don't like it, because infinite banking is about not being tied to those markets, not being tied to that volatility. It's about having the control back in your hands. And so that's why we don't do those. All right. So one of 2 things will happen to us in life. Obviously, we're going to live, right? So do we think that we're better with or without infinite banking if we live? Obviously better with it, right? Because we're able to use it and do other things and build wealth. We die, we graduate, as we call it. So are we better off with or without infinite banking in that scenario? Well, in our opinion, of course, we're better off with it because we pass on generational wealth guaranteed tax-free. So there you go. Now, quick story here. I call this the tale of 2 people. So when things get kind of volatile, like as recession, things like that, wealth gets transferred. And I see 2 different people. So when you think about wealth being transferred, how do you be on the winning side of that transfer? So there's one group, which is group 1. That's the group, by the way, that I used to be in for a long time. So in group 1, you put your head in the sand, you don't change. You said, I don't need this. I'm fine where I'm at. Maybe you're stuck with where you're at, but that's fine. When wealth is transferred, it comes from this group mainly. It gets stripped away, right? It gets stripped away. And so I prefer to be on the other side, group 2. Group 2 is that people that when they hear certain things, they want to learn about it. They want to kind of get that knowledge. They want to take action and be on that winning side of the wealth transfer. Typically, these people are ones that they're always looking for different sets of knowledge and to learn. They want to have control of time, control of money, control of their mindset, right? And so that's the group that infinite banking, by the way, people are. They're in that group too, because when they learn about this, they dive into it. They want to see how it can work for them. Okay. Group one, by the way, go at it alone. And that used to be me, by the way. That was me for a long time. And I had a lot of painful, expensive lessons in the early years going through this stuff. And so today, what I like to do is I like to be in group two. When I hear things, I want to learn more. I'll dive into it. I'll say, okay, does this fit today, or maybe down the road for me? Because I don't want to be like, no, no, I don't want to say no. I want to say, does it fit today? Does it fit down the road? So, you know, if you're in group two, by the way, if that's kind of you, just hop on a call and let's just kind of go through how infinite banking can work for you. Go through your questions, see how it can solve your situation, and see if it's a fit, by the way. Because I'm pretty straightforward. I'm kind of blunt. If it's not a fit, I'm going to tell you right away it's not a fit. And I do that quite a bit because don't want to waste your time, don't want to waste somebody else's time, don't want to waste my team's time if something's not going to be a fit. But in most cases, it can be, though, by the way. So, and by the way, Sheila, I got your text that I'll copy here in a moment. Excuse me. So I'm going to end on this. And if you guys have any questions, obviously feel free to chat, type them in. But I'll just say this: the problem in America isn't so much what people don't know; it's what people think they know that just ain't so. I love that quote. I wanted to end on that one because it just it just resonates with me quite a bit. And our team, we like this quote quite a bit because I used to think a different way about money that wasn't right until I learned about it. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, I get it. I thought I knew something. It really wasn't the right way of thinking, and I changed it, and all of a sudden changed my life. Um, yeah, yeah, Sheila, let's go ahead and chat. I'll send you. You have my email address. I have yours. So let's just go ahead and have a quick conversation. Yeah, Coley, corporate owned life insurance for anybody who's hearing me. So, Coley is where you have a corporation set up that actually owns life insurance policies on the owners and potentially even employees of an insurance company or of a business or company. And you can use that for like key employee insurance. You can use it for retirement funding, for retirement vehicles for people. Very cool way to use infinite banking. So, all right, guys. So that's it. Unless you guys don't have any questions, we will call it a day here. But I do appreciate you guys hopping on. Appreciate you spending some time with me here on a Thursday afternoon. So. Any last minute questions? Otherwise, we'll call it a day. Yeah, and yeah, it's great to kind of cool seeing someone in Olympia. Yeah, so don't see that very often. All right, everybody, appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your week here. Stay safe, and if you schedule a call with me, look forward to chatting soon. All right, take care.